Hi, everyone. Welcome to Money Mondays. I'm so happy to be here today with my friend Rochelle. Say hi to the people.
Hey everybody.
So, Rochelle and I have been friends for a while now. And I'm so happy to have her on because she is my friend that holds me accountable. If y'all been on my live, she's like the unofficial moderator for my lives and keeping the conversation going. It's so good to have friends that support you, that don't say, like, let me know what I can do, but she gonna show up every time. So I appreciate that about you. But Rochelle, not only is she my friend, but she's a real estate broker. She's been with Palmer House in Atlanta for several years now. She's an accounting expert on the corporate side. She is a person who has her master's in accountancy from Wash College. She from Detroit, y'all. She from real Detroit. So you a D graduate and a alumni of Wash College. So thank you for coming on today, Rochelle.
Thank you for having me, Tasha.
Hey, Jackie. Hey, Tanya. All right, so you're coming in. Make sure you hit that like button. And if you have any questions on real estate, drop them in the comment section because we're gonna get all of that because I saying I can't wait for you to join me. You the reason that I got involved with real estate as a investor. So we're gonna get to all of that later on. But first things first, I want to know how is it going just in general before I go into any specific questions. Um, this market now compared to pre-COVID? Like, are you seeing huge differences with how buyers are reacting, sellers reacting in the last since we came out of the pandemic versus when we first started?
Yeah, so the shift is definitely taking place. During the COVID market, we shifted into a seller's market. Prices skyrocketed. A lot was going on in the market. And then now here we are, like I said, post COVID, and literally we're just starting to see that shift. I have a listing under contract now. And from the time we went live till now, we're having an issue with our appraisal. So definitely shifting to more of a buyer's market, and so yeah, I do see the shift, and there's some other things, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
Okay, so the first thing is I want to talk about interest rates, right? So, um, hi Sharon, thank you for joining. So I want to talk about interest rates for a second. They the highest they've been since the '90s when we were just little toddlers. It hasn't been that high since the '90s. So I'm talking to friends who are interested in buying houses right now. What are you saying to people who are like, I'm gonna wait to buy because interest rates are so high, and I'm just not gonna get involved with the market because of that?
Well, it's funny you said that. When I first started real estate, I was like, oh my God, 3% rates are rising. It's 4% now. This lady in the office, who was probably 100, looked at me and said, girl, rates used to be 25%. And so, yeah, back in the 90s and the 2000s, we had those 2, 3%. Now we're in, the 2023. Wow. 5, 6% interest rates. It's real. 7, 8% interest rates. It's definitely real. Like I said, I definitely think they will come back down. Right now, we are in a correction market, right? We've already shifted to that buyer's market type thing, right? But rates will follow. When? I don't know. I don't have that crystal ball. However, it's always the time to buy. Always. Here's the thing, though. You have to know your goals, your financial affordability. You have to do your due diligence, right? So definitely always the time to buy. Like I said, do the math, and if the math works, and obviously that it the answer to that question differs whether it's personal or investment. But I definitely don't say hold your feet, right? When the market was a seller's market and the prices were high, there was multiple offers. The sellers could write the terms. Now we're shifting. This is an opportunity, right? So now we can negotiate prices. You're not multiple offers. They're on the market 30, 40, 50 days, right? And so now you're like, hey, I can send you a lowball offer, so to speak, right? So like I said, even with the listing that I have currently, from the time we listed to now, you watching the shift, and it's pretty interesting.
Okay, so Rochelle is saying it's always a time to buy rates rising because, like you said before, it was the skyrocketing prices. And it
Mhm.
was like, is it time to buy then? Hi. it was like, is it a time to buy when the people were paying cash $200,000 over offers and all of this stuff? People was asking the same question. And same thing now when interest rates are high. So what are you saying? I remember you just suggested like what a person should consider. Like it's up to what their goals are. So when you're working with this person who comes in who's saying like, I was pre-approved. Well, let's back up for a second. No, we can keep going with that. I was going to say, what are some factors that you see home buyers considering now, or when they're buying their first or second home? It could have been a while. Like, what factors are they considering when buying?
I mean, obviously, you want to know your credit worthiness, right? Can you purchase? How much can you afford? Those rates are definitely a factor because that same house at 2-3%, at 6%, that mortgage is a total different number. You could be looking at a $1,500-$1,600 mortgage, and then all of a sudden you're looking at a $2,300 mortgage. And I saw that personally happen with a young man that I was working with. He went under contract on new construction, and that was during the COVID market. And by the time they were done building, we were just easing out, and literally his mortgage rate probably went. I'm sorry, not the rate, but the actual mortgage amount that he'd be paying went up about $900. And so that really, really changes things. But that's definitely something you have to consider. So yes, is it time to buy? Yes. What can you afford is a different conversation. But that doesn't mean, sit back and wait or rent, because rent is high too, right? So you might as well start that purchase process and that appreciation game, right? But again, affordability, you should also consider lender, the right lender. I've had the experience of choosing the wrong lender personally. Everything was moving along, and then you got to a certain bottleneck, and by the end of the deal, or by the time closing is getting pushed back, you realize the bottleneck was the lender. Another thing, you want to choose the right agent. We'll talk about what the right agent looks like a little bit later.
Hold on. You said a whole lot right now already. So if you're watching now, and even if you want to replay, make sure you drop the questions down in comments. I always respond to every comment. Even when y'all be leaving me some comments that's questionable, I at least love it still. And I may move past it, but if you ask me, because you try to throw shade, I'm like, no, you didn't. I will still acknowledge your comment, because I'm like, thank you for the comment. Thank you for watching. But if you're watching on the replay, make sure you leave your questions in there. I'll respond there. And as you're jumping in and out of the live, make sure you're asking any questions you have regarding residential real estate. Even if you have a commercial real estate question, we can take it down and Rochell will get back to you. So just as we're going through our topics, make sure you drop them down. But factors to consider: what can you afford? The interest rate change. The interest rates as they climb increases your monthly payments. But I always remind people, you were going to pay more before in the market, because it was a seller's market, because interest rates were low and people feel like, oh my God, I need bigger houses, and then you would still play the game of having a more higher mortgage payment. So I'm just like, don't let the headlines throw you off on what your goal is, and it's what you can afford, right? Yep. So if you could only afford to pay $2,300 a month before, and the interest rates are going up, that means you got to buy a smaller house, is what this could be at this point right now. So I'm
sure, but that's true. Was the point. Don't get caught up in the headlines.
Right. Don't listen. The headlines are meant to just throw everybody off, I feel like.
One other point I want to say to consider, because I know we have a vast, range of people. So depending on whether you are self-employed, 1099 income, or whether you have W-2 income, right? So if you're 1099 self-employed, a lot of lenders are looking for 2 years worth of tax returns. So just being sure that you have that information, or if you don't, you're probably looking at a 2-year process, right? And make sure during that 2 years you document your income well, and be prepared to pay taxes on that income.
No, but
I was just gonna say it costs to play, right? So we think, we can make this 1099 income not reported, don't pay taxes. Well, if you want to purchase a home and be a part of the real world, then that's the way it works.
Right. Listen, for people, and this is why I don't do taxes, like, because some people, they don't. I know how to do things the right way. People want to tell me what they barber told them, what their hairstylist told them, to write off everything. You have losses. You can have paper losses. Anyway, you have all these losses. You want to go buy a house, and you only have your 1099 income, and it's like, you don't have no income coming in, how can you afford to buy a house? So just be careful. If you are a full-time business owner, like we had Eddie on last week, and he's a serial entrepreneur, right? So he is doing his stuff by the book, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to buy a house. You know, if you're going through a traditional lender, we should say, you need to show profitability, showing income coming in, because how can you afford to buy a house if you don't have those things? Go ahead.
So I'll piggyback to that too, right? Because there's a time and a place. You know, if you got a lot of expenses, your expenses are high. If they're real, right? Write them off. You know,
Yes.
Keep your income low. It's the name of the game, right? Donald Trump do it. So however we figure it out for ourselves, we, you know, play by the book. But when you're looking to purchase that house, like Tasha was saying, in those 2 years, you might don't want to write off everything, right? Because you have to show that income, right? And so that's when it matters. So yeah, now that you're in your house and you're not looking for the next real estate opportunity, yeah, you can flip it back to where, okay, now my income's a little bit lower and I'm not paying as much, you know, more of a tax shelter. So I just wanted to make that point.
Or actually pay yourself if you pay your actual salary as well. If you have the proper setup and you actually on payroll properly, that also gets out of the way. So listen, I know we talk about this all the time when she was telling me, like, this person, they got their own business making all this money, but then they report nothing. Now they can't buy a house with a lender. So what you mentioned, like you work deals and you seen stuff fall through because of lenders. So what should people look for when they're getting a lender? Just off the top of your head?
So definitely I think you should interview lenders. I think you should interview different lenders. Everybody, there is not no one size fit all. Even with agents, and I'm not the agent for everybody, and I'm gonna just tell you that now, right? So you want to have a personal connection, not personal, but you want to feel connected to that person. You don't want this to be an awkward scenario where you feel uncomfortable calling them, where you feel uncomfortable asking them questions, where you can't communicate and you know, trust that person in this environment and in this transaction. So definitely, like I said, banks, mortgage lenders, brokers, right? A lot of times the mortgage broker can actually shop multiple different rates, different companies. So they have that access, right? But you're dealing with that person. A lot of times they're very, very much so people persons, right? Because they know that relationships matter. So again, those are the things. Responsiveness really, really matters because again, like I said, my issue got bottlenecked when the responsiveness part got really, really interesting toward the end. Once they hand it off to the lower worker, then all of a sudden, you know, things get shaky. So that was my experience. So definitely it's a feel for sure too, but definitely you want to make sure that they can provide you information. One thing I always tell my buyers to get is a fee sheet. Some lenders act like they don't know what that is. So I say it in many different ways. Right. I say it in many different ways, but ultimately it's a list that tells me what is my bottom line payment, because that's all that really matters, right? We're talking about a $300,000, $500,000 house. How much do I have to pay at the end of the day, right? Because to your point, can I afford only $2,300? Well, that's what I need to know. And if that number is over $2,300, then let's find our way back up to this other number, right? The sales price or even the taxes sometimes. But nonetheless, can they provide you documentation of, you know, what your costs are expected to look like?
Right. I switched lenders with refinancing because and this was my original mortgage lender. But if you can't respond to me timely, I'm trying to get this done within a certain amount of time. You can't respond to my emails. You don't want to answer questions. Like some people feel, and this may be, I'm not even gonna say first time home buyers because I'm just thinking about talking with friends or just former colleagues. If you have been out the game with buying a house in 10, 15 years, you may have forgotten certain things. So some people be feeling uncomfortable asking questions, or I don't listen. If I hired you, you're gonna answer my question. And if you my lender, I hired you. So you better be answering my questions and emails. And I know you can't, I'm not expecting a response within an hour. I'm not. Like I'm gonna give you business day. We in the process of closing, and I'm calling you. No, I do expect for you to be responsive, but people be really scared to go ahead. You were about to say something.
No, I wasn't gonna say nothing. No, I was agreeing. You're right. They'd be scared
to ask questions. So if you're just joining, make sure you're hitting that like button. We're talking about factors to consider when you're buying your home. We're talking about dealing with lenders, how to know if you're working with a bad lender. My last thing before we move on off lenders, people are like, should I just apply to one lender? They have the best rate. So if I'm looking at USAA, for example, or Navy, whatever, Navy Federal, they have the lowest rate. Should I just apply with them, or how many people should I be applying for at one time?
I always tell people, just from a credit game too. I don't know if the people that we have on the call. If you guys are familiar, if you purchasing a home, you purchasing a car. When you make those inquiries in a small amount of time, I say a week. What are we dragging our feet for, right? Otherwise, if you want to purchase a home and you know that you've done the first part of your due diligence and we're at the applying portion, why wouldn't we apply for them all at once? So no, I say apply again. A range of lenders, the broker, the bank, the credit union. So 3 to 4 different lenders. Will that impact your credit? Yes, the category of your credit that impacts is a very low impact area, and also it will not impact it that much. And when a lender pulls your credit, usually the reason that that's an issue is because if a car loan or a personal loan, see, you've had your credit pulled 5 different banks and you've been declined by all of them. It looks like something going on. So that's the reason that level of visibility is there. If you're going to purchase a home and a lender looks and see you got 5 other lenders, they're like, oh, this person is a smart, educated buyer. No, they're not holding that against you. So again, small in a close time period, and also you're not going to be looking at denials. You're going to be looking at 3, 4 approvals if you're an approved client. So I definitely say more than one, 3 to 4.
Yeah, 3 to 4. Yeah, I think I did 3 when I first bought my. We're gonna get to my real estate journey and investing in a moment. I see a question come in about REITs. Go ahead.
One point I want to make, you were saying don't be afraid, ask questions. Communication is very, very, very important throughout this deal. You have to, I'm not sure if I dropped, maybe somebody shoot something, comment to let me know if I'm still on or not. Okay.
I was saying you were still on. You were still on.
Okay, I wasn't sure. But no, where was I making? Oh, communication is key. So not only, I know you said, I hired you, you're required to do X, Y, Z, and even with an agent, right? When you sign that agreement, it does say that I'm required to do my part, but you're required to do your part too. So yes, ask, communicate. Please make yourself available. You said an hour sounds unreasonable.
I'm saying not. I'm saying if I'm not in a deal time, if I'm just in regular things, go ahead.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I was gonna say I too would try to give someone 8 hours, business day or whatever, right? My husband, when he's in the deal, he is on it. So like if you tell him you need W-2s, you have W-2s in less than 5 minutes. Matter of fact, when he applies for the loan, he literally applies with every piece of documentation. Yeah, it may seem simple. Oh, I'm just doing this input form, blah, blah, blah. But when they have that full details, they can accurately tell you what you can qualify for. And then it just saves time later in the process. So again, I definitely say communicate, and be timely.
Yeah, listen, I'm like Dustin as well. Her husband, I call him the manager. But I have all my stuff. You ain't gonna blame me if something happening. So before, since we had the question come up about rental property REITs, so versus having rental. So I will say it's just your preference. I think owning real estate is a lot of work. People want to put on that passive income. I know we had Eddie on last week, so if you haven't seen that, he has a whole different way of doing things that works for him. But for me, I think, and I think Rochelle will agree with me here. I feel like having rental property is very active. It's going to be very active when you get in your tenants. You can have good tenants and they pay a rent. You don't have nothing to worry about. But it's really active, and it also depends on what your goals are. If you want cash flow coming in monthly from your rentals, what your personal income, your tax bracket is, because I got into rental properties from a tax perspective and cash flow perspective versus with having REITs. It's a lot of risk, in my opinion, with owning property, but there's a lot of benefits too. So it just depends on what your goal is. So I'll let you go ahead, Rochelle.
I'm sorry. Got lost a little bit. So you're saying, well, I don't understand the question exactly.
Basically, should if you she wants to buy a rental property in 5 years,
Uh huh.
she's saying she thinks that REITs would be a better investment from what she's reading because you putting your money in a real estate investment trust, and you can see your money grow with a better return in a REIT than actually purchasing real estate, going through the process of buying and all of that stuff. What's your thoughts on that? Like not even considering the market, but just comparing having a real estate investment trust versus having a rental property.
Oh, okay. So to your point, yeah, I agree with what you said. There's more benefits to purchasing a home investment than just right that interest rate, right? You got the appreciation of the property, you got the tax advantages such as depreciation that you can write off, you got your interest rates that you can write off. So there's other benefits, like you said, cash flow. In some instances, people cash flow 10 or $500-600 a door. You know, if you're talking multifamily, you got 3 doors and $500. That's $1,500 a month of just extra income. So, like Tasha said, it's not necessarily passive income. However, I still recommend the purchasing a rental property opposed to investing in a REIT.
And I mean, you can do both. I
You
mean,
can,
depending
yeah.
on what yeah, like, and don't feel like I think a lot of people feel limited, like I gotta do one or the other. But if you do both, I mean, you could start investing in a REIT now, because different REITs have different amounts you have to come in with. So let's say you can come invest into a REIT with $1,000 now or maybe next year. I would still put my money in a REIT and look into buying a investment property as well. So um, let us know if that makes sense. And I'm gonna jump back into just the home buyer mistakes. This as we were talking about factors to consider before buying, but when you're working with people, home buyers, what are some common mistakes that you see them make?
Um, here's a, well, I'm sorry. Oh, so yeah, choosing the wrong agent. um, Choosing a bad lender. So a lot of the points that I've reiterated, not doing due diligence. And when you say due diligence, right, in a real estate contract or in a sales contract, any type of contract, you have a due diligence period, and that due diligence may be listed as 7 days, 4 days, or whatever, right? And it's not just a period to do an inspection; it's a period to do a lot of things, right? So you want to really, really get to know that property from a tax perspective. You want to ride that property. You want to know what's going on in the day, in the middle of the day, during the night. What schools is in that community, right? So it's more than just that house. So definitely, it's a lot of people that don't do that part. They purchase the home and then they're they're very unhappy for whatever reason, but it's something that they could have avoided. So I know Tasha has a story about and,
No, mine. Go ahead.
and you try, and that's the thing, you can't avoid everything, but and not only an inspection, a surface level inspection don't always get it done, and that's just the point, right? Sometimes we got to go deeper, especially when you're purchasing older homes, right? And so to your point, over time though, that's when you learn as investors. With that experience, you learn those type of things, and on that second home, I'm sure you looked at things a little bit differently. But go ahead, you want to tell your story?
No, so I would say my mistake. I don't think it could have really
Oh,
been
yeah, I don't call it a mistake.
avoided. No. I think I should have followed my gut. So with the first home I purchased, it was a multifamily, which is my real estate investment purchase because I ran the numbers thanks to Rochelle. Even though I'm a numbers person, I am very conservative with my money. So all my money friends, if y'all notice a theme, Rance, he's a little bit conservative. I had him on first, and then we had Eddie on, we had Jackie on. I'm the one that's like, hold up, let me make sure everything makes sense. I'm with a fine tooth comb. And so I was like, I don't know if I can buy a house, da, da, da. But Rochelle was in my ear, and I'm glad I did it. But during the inspection, finished basement. So I'm talking about purchasing a home in Michigan. So Michigan tends to have basements. And it was an apartment down there, like fully finished 2 bedroom, kitchen, all of this stuff. And it was paneling up, like drywall and paneling up. And I was like, how do I know if there's mold behind there? Mold was my concern. But what I should have been concerned about was structure. And I asked the inspector this. I had a family friend come with me, who's a contractor. Everybody was like, this looks good bones, all of this stuff. On the inspector report, you could see like some structural issues had been addressed. The inspector was like, "Oh, everything's good to go." Well, a year and a half later, I had to pay almost $50,000 to repair that basement structure. And so going trying to do the whole lawsuit thing, it just didn't make sense at the time, because when you have something, a deal goes wrong like that, you have to really be able to prove that this seller knew about the issue at the time of sale. And so I couldn't prove that with talking with my agent that I had, and just everything, I had to just take that L. But it was a tax write-off at the end of the day. But I had to come up with that money fast. So that was not ideal. But making sure you listen to your gut during the inspection process.
Let me ask you this: was the any of the paneling able to be pulled back?
Yeah, we would have had to cut. And same thing with the sub part, the drywall, it would have had to been cut out.
Okay.
But it wasn't something like you can pop out. It would have had to been like a cut.
Okay. And I'll say this, like, it sounds crazy, but it's not unreasonable to ask the seller, is that okay? Why? Even if you plan to, I mean, whether you plan to offer to pay for the fix or not. And the reason being, right, if they don't let you, that's the red flag. And they should be willing. They want to sell this house, but at the same time, you pay $200-$300 to repatch some drywall. It saves you $49,000. So, again, do your due diligence. And when I say do your due diligence, I do mean get intimate with that house, just like I'm suggesting now. Pull back carpet. If it can be assessed, assess it. And if it can't, and to your point, you got a gut feeling about something, or something looks too good to be true, a finished basement, like that's how people hide things, so definitely do your due diligence.
Look, now I'm like, I don't ever want to see no finished basement. I don't want a basement at all. Give me a crawl space. But no, it made, because it was so funny. I kept saying, well, how do I was concerned about mold, and I had got mold testing done to address that issue that I had, but I never thought about structure, because the inspector said that the structure was fine. Yeah. He pointed out an issue with the roof, so I was like, if y'all don't replace this roof, I'm not buying the house. They was like, okay, we'll replace the roof. So, but I had issues with, I'm like, okay, and then found out about that. So, I see some comments coming through. Okay, no, she was just saying thank you. You're welcome. So before we move on to the really agent part and more stuff about selling,
I'm sorry. 1 second. I do want to mention another big mistake that people do is I guess making financial decisions that would change your credit rating or your DTI, debt to income. That includes changing jobs, right? So if you go from a W-2 to 1099, you want to be self-employed, now you're doing great. Do you have 2 years of tax returns? So again, don't go buy a car and then your credit score, rating, everything changes, and now your interest rate is impacted by that. So again, anything that can impact your credit rating or the actual debt to income ratio, whether that's debt or the income side, again, be very careful there. You'll be in the mid deal, change your job, and realize that the deal's dead and you lost your earnest money.
Yeah, like you gotta make, once you in that process, once you put that offer in and all of that, like you need to make sure nothing's changed in that time. Like don't be doing nothing. Should there be more than one inspection?
I was gonna get into that.
More than one inspector, I should say.
I was gonna get into that. Tasha made mention, she kept bringing up the inspector and how he mentioned that the structure was good. Inspectors they're not specialists in those areas. If you notice, a lot of times they put very, very blanket statements on here. This appears fine. Please consult a licensed professional for further. Every area in there, plumber, call a plumber, HVAC, call an HVAC. An inspector is literally a really, really, really high level. It's better than us doing it with our own eyes, right? And it's good to have that stuff on paper. Somebody possibly liable further, right? But again, that inspector writes those blanket statements and they're to kind of take themselves off the hook. So I suggest, again, depending on when the house was built, do research online, things to consider and to look out for, whether that's pipes, whether that's structure, whether that's mold. systems, all that type of stuff. Again, you want to kind of have, like I said, you want to be intimate. Never send an inspector to a house for you by themselves. You go with them. You follow them around. You ask them questions. Again, you are getting intimate with this thing, this purchase, the largest one you probably make ever in your life, and you might possibly live there for 30 years. So please, 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 yeah.
No,
Inspectors, multiple, if you can. It's a costly thing. It's $500, right? But again, if there is a specific area, for example, a roofing inspector, and a lot of times they'll come out and give you free estimates and things like that. So please do consider that. If you can get free estimates and quotes from everywhere, you have your due diligence period to do so, and I encourage you to use it wisely.
no, as far as the roofing inspector, once he made the comments about the roof, I was like, okay, I had called around for quotes because I had to know what I was going to ask them to come down on like on the purchase price. So what I ran into was people like, well, you have to be the owner of the home for me to give you an estimate. Then I'm like, just give me just for the type of house or whatever, the square footage, just give me an estimate off of that. But sometimes you may need to contact the homeowner to get their approval, which that's going again of like not being like feeling like, oh, I can't do this. Like this is about to be a lot of money. So do what you need to do. Don't be a people pleaser and be like, I didn't want to offend nobody. Okay. And so I did all of that. I was like asking the questions and then this still happened. So it was like how I could have avoided it was I went with the roof. That was my concern. But I really had a feeling about mold being behind the wall, and I should have pressed and had that done. That's my only thing. But stuff happens, right? So another question came in is it possible inspector can be on it with the seller saying everything is fine with the house? No, because you hired the inspector, so I hired my own inspector, right? So the seller's not hiring the inspector. So unless you happen to hire an inspector that knows the seller, like that wouldn't happen. But go ahead, Rochelle.
Oh, you answered it.
um, so taking a pause for sponsor today, which is me, Tasha Journeys. If you are looking to get your finances together, hit that financial goal, I'm coming on live next week to tell y'all where I'm at with my Q1 goals. This is my accountability partner right here. When I get on me every other Sunday to make sure I'm hitting my quarterly goals. But anyway, booktasha.com. If you are like, okay, this is the year that I'm going to buy my house, or I want to take that dream vacation, but I need help with doing it. It's already about to be April 1st, and you said you was going to do better with your money. So if you ain't did that, you may need a coaching session with me. So booktasha.com for that, or if you want insight on how to book a solo trip. So we always talked about buyers. What about the sellers? What if I got a house and I'm like, listen, I need to get rid of this house because I need to retire. I want to go ahead and just get some extra money in my pocket. Inflation is getting to me. I don't feel like dealing with this. What are factors people should consider when selling a home?
So first and foremost, it's not free to sell your house. So, we tell buyers all the time, real estate representation is free. Real estate representation is free. Well, if somebody's paying that representation, that's the seller. They pay on behalf of both the buyer and the seller. So real estate generally is about 6 to 8% for the seller. So if your house is 500K, you're looking at $30,000 in costs up front, right? And that's on the low end. So first and foremost,
wait, and when I want to sell my house, I gotta pay all that money?
yes, ma'am. 500,000, 6%. Again, 6% because you're paying the 3%, and these are standard rates. I'm calling out 6% generally split 3% by the buyer and the seller. So 15K to the buyer, 15K to the seller. But who pays it? You. So off your 500,000, that's the sales price. Minus out that 30K, minus out whatever other numbers, right, are coming out to get to your bottom line. But most importantly, I think that's the most important thing people need to know and consider. Also, if you buy high, if you sell high, you have to buy high, right? So that was a theme that I was telling people last year, right? So I got a buyer that's like, oh, I'm excited. The selling prices are so high. I'm going to sell. Okay, where are you going to live? And then it was crickets, right? Because again, we were in that multiple offer situation. All in all, that's so now we're in the other side of that, right? The buyer's market. And so now what do you have to consider as a seller? That you can't be as aggressive with pricing, that you may sit on the market a little bit longer. that you can't dictate those terms like you were before. During that seller's market, we were seeing people waive their due diligence period. Do you hear me? The due diligence period that I just stressed so much. I would not even take a client who's waiving due diligence unless, of course, it was a cash investor who didn't care about money. Let's do it. But
I got a question. So, I know from being a home buyer, that perspective of due diligence, but from a seller, you're basically saying, what does that look like on the opposite side if they waive due diligence and was selling their house?
So the seller, if someone offers, asking, they put in down a $5,000 earnest money, and they say no due diligence, meaning they're going to buy your house or they'll give you $5,000. So if they decide tomorrow they wake up gut feeling whatever, they don't want to buy it anymore, that's okay. We'll keep your $5,000 and have a nice day. So that's what it means. Essentially, the earnest money is at risk with no due diligence. So no, it doesn't mean. Now a seller technically can sue you for performance, but generally the legal system will allow earnest money to suffice. So
okay. No, I just wanted to know that. So anyway, you were going on with like factors to consider. I just interrupted you because I wanted a clarification.
No. I mean, and those are major factors, to be completely honest with you. There's not a lot. Appraisal. So being realistic, like I said, I'm currently working with a buyer or a seller who wanted to sell high, who wanted to list high, despite advice saying you're worth X dollars. So you have to be mindful of that, right? If your agent is suggesting that you're worth 20, 30, 40K less than where you want to start, it's okay. I mean, I was willing. I'm actually working with a friend. I was willing to list her over market, and I knew that, but we lost time. So every week we set at those higher numbers, we lost time. Again, I told you we shifted to a buyer's market, so that wasn't a good idea, right? So one, listening to your agent and being realistic about the value of your home. There was many comps to support the number that I was saying, but you have this person who felt they saw the seller's market happening and they wanted to be a part of it and take advantage of it. So, one moment, please.
Okay. I'll drop you off the. I was gonna say you gonna be. I was about to say you getting a little darker there. I'm gonna let you get it together. I'm gonna drop you off screen, but I can still hear you. So if you're coming in, making sure. Ooh, I guess we having trouble with. She having technical. I can't talk difficulties, but make sure you're hitting that like button. Any questions you have on buying or selling the home, make sure you drop them in the chat. We're gonna get to more on the investor side in a second, but just want to address the initial process with buying a home, mistakes people make, and all of that. So I want to also say when people come talk to me when they have the goal of purchasing the house and they're doing their budget, I want to mention a couple programs to consider when if you're buying a home for a first time. You want to consider if there's any down payment assistance programs in your state that you may qualify for. Usually it's income based, but don't just assume that if you're a high income owner that you earner, I say owner, that you don't qualify for different things like home down payment assistance programs. I know Michigan had a really good one. I had a friend go through that process. Also NACA, NACA. That's a program that helps people pay for their closing costs, and that's not income based considered. You just have to go through the program. Another thing we didn't mention was first time home buyer program. So if you're watching this, or if maybe it's been, like I said, some people it's been 10 years since they bought their first home. So if that's you, consider going to a first time home buyers class just to get a refresher on all the things that Rochelle and I are talking about. A lot of people don't take that into consideration. They just call friends who bought a house recently, and it's like, listen, go to the class. That will be helpful, but don't rule out programs I'm mentioning. Like you can Google down payment assistance programs, and if you are, make sure it has .gov behind it. Like don't just make sure you're clicking on any website to get it could be a scam type thing. Down payment, and then like I said, NACA. They will help you with your closing costs. So these are programs to look up if you are considering buying a home. If you are a veteran, you definitely have benefits with getting a VA loan. I think it's no down payment. So it's just different things you can consider if you're thinking about buying a home right now. If you're like, okay, financially, can I afford to do this? Like, you could get assistance with down payment program or with closing costs. And then another thing is working on improving that credit, because that credit score is going to determine your interest rate, which determines your monthly payment. So I'm gonna see if Rochelle is ready to be back in stream. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready, Rochelle, and I'll add you back in. Okay.
Does it look a little
Okay.
better?
Yeah.
A little better lighting? Okay.
Oh, let me let you get it together over there for a second. So
That's Georgia. The sun set around, you know.
I look, I do it. I noticed that's what happened. And I'm on the other end of the world, so it's the sun just came up over here. I'm in Thailand, and so it's morning for me.
Is
So
it
I
8
had
a.m.?
got a.m. It's it was 6:30 a.m. when we started. So I'll be early morning because I'll be wanting to be on evening time for people thinking they get off work. But I think I may switch it up when I do these again. I only want to go live in March. I'm gonna switch it and maybe do lunch. I don't know. We gonna figure out where I am in the world. If y'all got questions on where I am, so y'all drop that in the chat. What should a person look for? We talked about what a person should look for in a lender. What should a person look for in an agent? Or let me rephrase this another way too. When people come to you after working with the agent, what's their biggest complaint? Why they came to you and they fired that person?
I take that with a grain of salt. Buyers are liars, but oh, and that's a fact. I apologize, buyers, but so yeah, sometimes what they're saying they fired the other agent for has some merit to it. Sometimes it does not. Sometimes you can figure that out. Sometimes you can't. So yeah, but what should one look for when they're trying to find the right agent? Somebody who's one listening, who understands your goals, who seeks to fulfill those goals. Somebody who's knowledgeable of the local market, someone who has experience in the business. Not, I mean, there's a lot of new agents popping up, always will be, always has been. They won't last really long, but they're going to be there. And if you happen to choose one of them, they spend your money there. So you have this brand new agent spending a lot of your hard earned money. So again, just be very careful there. And I know, I hate to say it, but someone, and Tasha keeps making references to, people who bought a house 10 years ago, 15 years ago, who did it. But, so actual experience with purchasing and selling a home. I am a real estate agent, broker. I've sold many, 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 many homes. But when you actually have the personal experience of selling a home and buying a home, it is so different. You know what that feeling is like when you're waiting on the appraisal. You can really empathize and sympathize with your clients, in a different kind of way when you've been through that process. It really, really just changes the game. Even from, when I made my investment purchase, I also saw the difference. That experience is, again, very, very different. So I even offer, like I said, the calculations. That's a separate set of, skills that I have and business services that I offer. But yeah, so like I said, it's definitely important to have somebody who's done that thing that you're looking to do, whatever that may be. So, were there other things? Like I said, listening, responsiveness with that lender, with the agent, with everybody involved in the process. And
So when you're saying that, I was gonna move on to the thing on the flip side of that. So we know what you should look for in an agent. So if you have any questions on that, make sure you drop them in the chat so we can address them. When to fire an agent. So I'm again speaking from just thinking friends over the years, and I'm like, you can fire them, right? Like, why are you complaining about the lender over and over again, and complaining about your real estate agent not doing what you want? So when is it time to fire an agent?
I just reiterate some of the things that I said before, right? So, what is a good agent? Are they listening? Are they getting to the goal? Are they just sending you a list of homes? Or are they hand picking and suggesting them? And like I said, really paying attention. There's sometimes someone says, I have to have a garage. And then you send them a home that doesn't have a garage. That's a real big indicator. I will say, we're all human. It's worth communicating. We talked about that, right? It's worth communicating. You just don't fire an agent just because, this one house popped up that was out of the criteria. You make mention of that and you see if they correct the actions, right? But not bigger question, but there's also a time when agents can fire a buyer or seller too, just to let you know.
Wait,
Again,
before you get to that, the reason why I said when to fire an agent, I know I had to sign a paper saying I wasn't going to work with another agent,
yeah,
like when I was buying my house.
yeah.
So if I decide I don't want to work with them, do I just ghost them, like, or do I need to do anything formally?
Yep. So it's a broker agreement, a broker agency agreement that you sign when you first start doing real estate. Most good agents are going to require that you do such. It's generally a time period, so you have a say in that as well, right? They may offer you a 6 month contract. You may say, I want to do 3 months. There may be a discussion and a negotiation accordingly. Nonetheless, if during the contract period you are not happy with your services, you put in writing, that you want to be released from that agreement. If the agent, usually the agent should release you, and if they don't, you take it to the next level. You send that letter to a broker. Again, you do the necessary steps to get out of that, because if you don't and you purchase a home with another agent, especially if it's one that the other agent shown you, you could be liable for having to pay that commission to that agent too once your house closed. Again, services were free to you when you were working with me, but now you went behind my back and we got a contract in place. Now you owe me some money. I'm taking you to court. So definitely, thanks for bringing that up. You have to, get out that contract in writing.
No, because that's what I would be reminding people. Because people complain to me. I'm like, my friend Rochelle, while she's in Atlanta, she can refer you to an agent that's in your area. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, but don't just ghost that person. You got to let them know that you don't want to work with them no more. You can't just be like, I'm just stop answering their calls, because what Rochelle just mentioned could happen. So did you have anything else to add to that?
I was just gonna say, as a good agent, that's my first question. Hey, I want to buy a house. Are you working with anybody? Have you signed any paperwork? Like, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want you to get in trouble. And at the end of the day, I'm an agent in this profession as well, right? So I want us all to be respectful and ethical.
So listen, we're on the last point for this evening, real estate investing. I already touched on my experience, my nightmare within my experience. But before we get into like numbers and deals and all this other stuff, how did you get involved with being a real estate investor? Not just a broker or agent who got experience. What's your story behind being an investor?
Well, I purchased my first home back in Michigan, 2011. And then my husband and I decided to move to Atlanta in 20 whatever. We decided to move to Atlanta and we sold our home. The profits was lucrative and we was like, wow, real estate is pretty cool. So like I said, I moved down to Atlanta. I'm a finance professional. I didn't start working right off the bat because I thought it'd be cool to see what it's like to be a Real Housewife of Atlanta. And so while sitting there getting my nails done, y'all, I was talking I was talking to this lady and she was like, look, you can't take it, huh? I was calling y'all like I am a Real Housewife of Atlanta.
You are a mess.
Thanks, husband. Thanks, manager. But
right. That's it.
So I was sitting there getting my nails done. A lady brought up like real estate. I don't remember what happened, but again, I was already thinking like, man, that's a vibe. We can make a lot of money in real estate. So she was telling me about becoming an agent and how quickly you can do it. I'm the type of person like to do stuff real quick. So I got my real estate license in 2 weeks. I became an agent within less than 30 days, was affiliated with Coldwell Banker, and that's when the process started. So the thought behind becoming an agent was that I could save on the investment because I could put my commissions toward that, and I don't have to prove or say nothing. As long as the deal is going to close, they know that I'm entitled commission, and that commission can be applied to the deal. So, any purchase I buy, any purchase I make.
Come on, my friend is smart.
Yeah. So, definitely, and y'all heard what I said earlier. If y'all selling y'all house, y'all might want to become an agent, save you $30K. But no, seriously. So that's how I kind of got into it. Then I started reading books to kind of see what type of investment I wanted to go about. Reading books, listening to podcasts. I'm not going to shout out the podcast, but because they ain't sponsoring. So we can talk offline if necessary. But
I
nonetheless,
was tell them anyway, so go ahead.
oh, okay. Biggerpockets.com. And Bigger Pockets is where we like I said, a lot of investing knowledge from Bigger Pockets got me really, really excited about investing in multifamily. Why multifamily? Because I could live rent free. That's pretty cool. A lot of time rent or mortgage is our highest expense. And when you purchase a multifamily home, a lot of times that second door or the third door, if you get rentals in there, they can afford to pay for the full property. So now you live there rent free. That's a way to start saving more money, right? That money you would be paying for a mortgage, you're saving that to make your second investment. Isn't that cool? It's snowball. So I definitely encourage multi-family. It's definitely a sacrifice, right? So if you have a family, if you're not really able to live next to someone, there's factors that go into that. But if you are able, willing, and willing to make that sacrifice, you only have to live there for 1 year.
Yes. So that's how Rochelle enticed me into becoming a real estate investor, was through multifamilies. And my biggest thing was I had never like lived in a actual like single family dwelling, not even single, but just like a single dwelling. Like I always lived in apartments growing up, and I'm like, I ain't never lived in a house. I'm not. Every time I had an excuse, Rochelle was just like, okay, so you can just research that. So that's why I'm here. You can ask me questions. I'm an agent, so I know like all my reasons. And Rochelle was like had an answer, and I was like, oh my God. Okay, let me just look let me look into this. So that's why I always say, y'all heard me say every live, it's so important to have, like-minded friends who are going to push you and hold you accountable, who don't just say everything's a great idea, don't want to have any like way of pushing you to grow. Because I was like, I am not going to do this. Now, I will say this backstory is I had just became debt free a few months before this. And I was living in downtown. I was living in my favorite little high rise, had a perfect view. And I'm like, I don't want to buy a house. I had like, if I bought multifamily, what if they know I'm an owner? I don't want them asking me questions morning, noon, and night. I had all these reasons why, but again, I wanted a way to have another stream of income, thinking long term. Because like when you are a real estate investor, my personal opinion is if you buy a property, you shouldn't be expecting to like use it as a source of income within the first couple of years, just in my opinion, just because you're going to have stuff that's going to go wrong like this. You're just not going to, you can have every specialist come in, roofing, plumbing, it's going to be something that's going to happen within that first 2 years, in my opinion. So it's like, let me just go ahead and stack my money. Go ahead. I've been talking for a minute.
No, I was agreeing, just agreeing. The age of the home matters, though. Something don't always go wrong.
Yeah, I'm so that first house I'm jaded, but I still bought another house after that. So
that's what I liked about it. That you didn't allow that $50,000 to discourage you.
Yeah, because I'm like, because it was I ran the numbers such that like Rochelle brought up big pockets. So just off the bat, I can never see me purchasing a home that I can't rent out from, because I already knew I had this wanderous spirit. Heck, I'm in Thailand now. I was in Michigan forever, but I'm like, I don't want to buy a house because what if I want to move in a year? So for me, if I want to move in a year, I need to run the numbers to make sure if I want to rent it out, I won't be losing money. So for me, that's looking at the purchase price and seeing 1%, can I charge 2% to 2% ideally on the house and rent. So if I buy a house for $100,000, can I charge $1,000 in rent? Like if I buy it and get it ready cost, all of that took $100,000. Can I charge $1,000 for rent? That's usually a good high level check to see if you're gonna make money from it.
The 1% rule.
Yeah, the 1% rule. So that was my story on like I was scared because I didn't own a home before. I never knew what the experience was like. And what is it gonna be like being a landlord? And Rochelle's like, you can't hire a property management company, or you can do it yourself. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about becoming an investor. So you got me involved with it. So publicly, thank you again. Any chance I get, I always say thank you for that. But we went traditional financing route. So I got an FHA loan for my multifamily because FHA, I was living in a home. It was my primary home. I only had to put 3% down as well. So this is why I was like, this is another thing that appealed with me for multifamilies. That's when the market was good. I think I bought the first house in 2017, the second house in 2018. So things are a little bit different now. So do you think the 1% rule can apply in this market? If someone wanted to get involved with purchasing their real estate, their first rental property this year through traditional financing, what tips would you provide?
Biggerpockets.com for sure. They provide calculators to run the numbers, whether you want to do a fix and flip, whether you want to do a hold, whether you want to do so different avenues of purchasing. They give you that ability to kind of put the number really hash out the numbers. So definitely Bigger Pockets. But I say, geez, can you repeat your question?
No, I was saying, what should they consider? No, Bigger Pockets is a good spot, good starting point. Like in this market, because we bought our homes when we had low rates and low prices. We was like, hey, so we got it at which people can consider the perfect time. Mm-hmm. But there's always a deal, and that's what I love about BiggerPockets.com with their podcast in general, because you're listening to people's stories. You can learn from it, and what you can apply if you are looking for it in your deal. And so it was like, okay, how am I what's the first step into actually doing this? And so when you hear people talk about their first step over and over again, you like, okay, I got some insight into how it's in running the numbers. That's how you know if it's a good deal. I always tell people, when it comes to investing your money, whether it's purchasing your home for your personal use, rental property, or just in the stock market, don't let these headlines scare you. If you know the basics, fundamentals of investing and stuff, you know what to look for, so you can make the best deal for you. Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought that up again about the headlines, because also you don't want to get caught up in the rules, right? Just one-sided. So Tasha, and I tell her sometimes she say, oh, 1%, 1%, 1%. Well, sometimes in certain markets, that 1% rule might not be, that might not happen, right? But that didn't take away from all the other factors. So now interest rates are higher, meaning you're paying more interest. But remember, we talked about interest being a tax advantage because you get to write off your interest. So definitely, like I said, I always think it's a good time to buy real estate. Run the numbers, think about the tax advantages, think about the appreciation of the asset, think about the, like I said, tax advantages such as the interest that you get to write off, as well as the depreciation on a large asset. When they say you can write off, you divide about 27 years and write off that turns out to be a large number, right? When it comes to getting that tax figure down. But again, there's other factors to be considered. It's not just the 1% rule. It's not if I can. Sometimes you don't even have to cash flow, because as Tasha mentioned, you're not looking to get the money to spend, right? You're not looking to live off this money, right? But so sometimes it may say, okay, for the next 1 year, I might only make $100 on this door or $50 on this door. But are we considering the fact that you save $10,000 on your taxes? Are you considering, the fact that the house appreciated over time? Real estate is a long-term game. And ultimately, although we see the drops in the market and the recessions, real estate appreciates over time. And that's just the fact. So.
Yeah, and there's we are talking about real estate from from the standpoint of being a property owner and renting out to long-term tenants. Some people want to get involved with real estate to go ahead and just start flipping. And that's a whole another set of criteria. And Bigger Pockets is a good resource to know numbers on that. But I would say you got to have a good team. Even with you getting your first rental property, listen, I done been through so many good contractors that they got bigger projects, and I was small fish to them, and they moved on. And it's good to know other people who do this as well. Having been call Eddie, I need somebody to know how to do this because this person is not being responsive. So whether you're doing flipping or buying just to buy and hold and have just a tenant, you need to start networking across in your industry. Join a Facebook group in your area that's real estate investors, because you can see people posting contractors that suck and that are good. And you have people that's knowing what's going on in your district court. So if you have an interest in investing in real estate, we're talking about just one lane of it, but there's so many other options. I know Tasha had put in there about REITs. That's a way to invest in real estate without actually like being out in a day-to-day aspect of it. You can do flipping, you can do wholesaling, you can do a lot of different things with real estate. Just make sure you find your tribe to do it. What else I was gonna say with being a property owner, real estate investor, and trying to get traditional financing, like we talked about, running numbers. It can always be a good time depending on how you run those numbers. Also, I just lost my train of thought as far as like the cash flow thing. I like what you said about you brought up about the tax stuff and just thinking about the cash flow piece of it. But I'm thinking long term. So I got 15-year mortgages on these. Okay, so in 15 years they're gonna be paid off. Some people may buy a house to fix up. Eddie, that was his strategy. He put all sweat equity in, so he don't have a mortgage, so he cash flowing now. And he's not thinking about a tax purposes. So it's so many different avenues to go. And that's why if you are like, what are y'all talking about? You should do a one-on-one with me so we can break it down a little bit more. So
look,
we are at the end of the hour. And this is Rochelle's contact information. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts since we don't have any more questions coming through.
No, well, yes. Real estate, always invest in real estate or always consider it. Yes, I know the rates are high, but just to let you guys know, I am currently looking to invest in my next real estate investment now, despite the rates. So I just encourage you guys to buy. They're not making any more land. So that's the one unique thing about real estate. So
I'm putting your information up here just for the replay. If you have any questions, you can shoot Rochelle a text about if you like, I think I want to fire my agent. Can you refer to me someone? That's always good if you're not in the Atlanta area. If you just have questions in general about getting started, maybe you're a renter and you're like, I think I need to buy within the next year or two. Just throw some questions out because she may let you know like you can actually buy now. Let's talk about it. So she's really good at just like, okay, how is this a barrier? And in a respectful way, not in a little that cheesy. You know how car salesmen be and they just be like, it's not in that way. It's gonna be beneficial for you. So again, I'm gonna wait a couple more seconds to see if I see any more questions come through about real estate. But just since I brought up being rentals, rent is gonna continue to go up. So it's just asking yourself, like, how can you not just be on the receiving end and feeling stuck if rent keeps increasing. I'm not saying like buying is the absolute way, but housing is the biggest part of people's budget. So I just encourage you to look at the programs I mentioned earlier, NACA, see if it's down payment assistance programs for you. Even if you are low income, there's some Section 8 home buying opportunities as well. Don't feel like as a renter you're stuck and you don't have any options. Like that's why you need to start planning for it now, because the worst thing is to be on the side of it. Everything is so high what they have going on in California. Even you starting to see it in Michigan where people are now forced to live in their cars or on the street because the rental market is pricing them out. So that's one thing to consider when thinking about real estate. So thank you, Lisa, for watching. You're welcome. And since we don't have any more questions, Rochelle, this is it. So
thank y'all
for joining, and I will see y'all on the next one. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Tasha.